Monochrome is a cheat code in photography. You don't believe me? Take this for proof of my theory. Switching back to color, you can see your eyes wandering all over this frame due to the multiple distracting and clashing colors. Like, come on, I'm basically camouflaged into the background wearing this sweater. But with the color stripped away, we're left with a composition of the photography fundamentals: light, depth, and texture. So in today's video, I want to show you how and when to shoot in monochrome, because it's more than just removing the saturation, as there's definitely an art to it, and today I'll show you how to do it right. But before we jump in, let me fix this set design because it's starting to stress me out. Also, this video is sponsored by Storyblocks, the king of stock content for creators. So let's start by winding back the clock to understand why black and white images have this timeless and nostalgic feel to them. If you think about the last 200-year history of photography, color culture is still relatively new. That's why black and white became the default visual language in newspapers, portraits, and even early day cinema. Color photography only really took off in the last few decades, so when you see a monochromatic image today, it immediately triggers a nostalgic or a timeless feeling. The first photo ever made wasn't even about color, it was about dimension, shadow, and shape. And because of this history and culture of monochrome, I follow a lot of photographers who exclusively only shoot in black and white images. And this reminds me that a good photograph isn't just about the color in our images, it's all about the composition, the light, and the emotion. Peter Ligberg did say black and white photography erases time from the equation. Okay, so now we know why black and white just looks so good. However, I did mention before, to achieve a black and white image, you don't just strip away the saturation and call it a day, as monochrome is slightly more nuanced than that. The definition of monochrome. So monochrome is an image of shades of gray, right? So think white to black. But you can also have monochrome in color images as well. So think of different shades of one color. I'll be just talking and referring monochrome as black and white in this video, as I covered color in a monochromatic way in my color theory video, which is linked down below if you want to check it out after watching this video. And there are three main ways to obtain or create a monochromatic image. You have the expensive way, the technical way, and the lazy or the easy way. An expensive process is to buy a dedicated camera with a monochrome sensor. A monochrome sensor has no color filter array at all, meaning it doesn't capture red, green, or blue separately. This results in a sharper, cleaner black and white image with greater detail and less noise. It's definitely expensive, but also a very powerful tool found in cameras like the Leica M11 monochrome, the Leica Q2 monochrome, or Phase 1's achromatic black. And that's typically used by photographers who are just fully committed to black and white as a creative choice. Then you have the more technical way, and that's by using this, a red filter. Now, there's definitely other filters to use in black and white photography that provides a different look or effect, but by far the red filter is the most popular, and that's because a red filter, well, it makes your images red. But this process cuts the blue light out of an image. I know there's no blue in a black and white image, bear with me here. So basically all of the RGB hues still affect brightness, aka luminosity. So cutting out blue light like in the skies or the shadows, a red filter makes those areas appear much darker and more dramatic in the final image. Because a lot of photographers who shoot black and white, they just love contrast, and that's the main reason of a red filter. If it's too much contrast, you can start with a yellow and move your way up to red. And I've taken some of my favorite black and white film images to date with a red filter. Yes, a red filter does work the same in film and digital photography, and also monochrome sensors. I will be running through a comparison of using a red filter versus not using a red filter, so definitely keep watching towards the end of this video. And then to finish our list, the third option we have is the easiest, or a more accurate description would be the lazy way, is just shooting in color and then using a monochromatic profile to convert to black and white later. This was my method, but recently I've been learning to express intent in my black and white images, which brings me on to how and when to shoot in black and white. But before we jump into that section, remember when I was talking about the history of monochrome earlier? Well, that vintage footage I showed, I got from today's sponsor, which is Storyblocks. It took me only about 10 seconds to search old film camera black and white and drop that straight into my edit. That's the power of Storyblocks. You get unlimited download of stock video, music, sound effects, and templates, all for one predictable subscription. Even this background music you're hearing right now is from their library. Everything is created by real artists, and it's royalty free and ready to use forever, so you don't have to stress about copyright claims or licensing. And right now you can get 2 extra months for free when you sign up for the annual plan. Just head to storyblocks.com/GerardNeedham. It's linked down below. Big thank you to Storyblocks for sponsoring this video and allowing you guys to watch this video for free. I found success and personally think that you've got to shoot in black and white intentionally. So avoiding that mentality of I'll shoot in color and maybe I'll switch to black and white later while I'm editing is definitely a mentality I've stopped doing. Pretty much all cameras have a monochrome setting. It can be tucked away in the menu under picture control or some fancy wording like that, or you can buy the Nikon ZF, which has a dedicated switch for that. But my point is, switching your camera profile to black and white trains your eye to focus on the light, contrast, and texture instead of just being distracted by the color. If you want to be more committed, you could use this red filter right here, or you could actually shoot on black and white film. I believe this locks you into a creative monochromatic mindset. It pushes you to think about geometry and how light wraps around your subject, where the shadows fall, where the highlights hit, and how to separate tones without relying on color. Directional light becomes your best friend, adding texture and punch to the scene, and you'll learn about layers and depth in photography. You really do start chasing contrast, and with this new knowledge, adding harmonizing colors back into your images will give your work a stronger sense of depth, balance, and visual harmony. Like Rafael Moura is a great example. He's from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And guys, I've been there twice, and dude, the colors are just wild there. But I love his black and white images. It's all shot on film, so you know it's intentional. But when he switches to color, it's like he's seeing in another dimension. Now, a lot of people do a full spiel about how black and white images is all about contrast and how to add more contrast into your black and white images. But my opinion is that photography is an art, right? Like, it is definitely subjective. And I like to go the opposite way. Like, I'll shoot in black and white in softer lighting conditions like the rain or on cloudy days. I definitely prefer to edit my black and white images with less contrast for my portraits because I don't want to highlight too much texture for obvious reasons. Like, look at some of the work from this photographer, and I've definitely got to butcher this name, John Wadsworth. He has deliberately underexposed or developed his film differently for that softer, more pleasing contrast with that raised black look. For portraits, if you want more contrast but pleasing skin texture, adding a flash is a great option. It lets you shape the light for more precision, separate your subject from the background, and still keep that soft, flattering detail in the skin, plus without any weird color cast or white balance issues, so you don't need to stress about the color of the skin tones. So before we wrap this section up and we jump onto Lightroom, I just want to say that when you can make a photo work in black and white, you understand the fundamentals of photography. Alright guys, so now I just want to give you guys a quick couple of editing techniques when you're editing black and white images, and I do want to do an entire video on this topic. If you want to see that, make sure you comment down below. But let's start with actually converting your color images into black and white. Alright guys, so obviously we have a color image in front of us, and this is edited with my Lightroom presets. So there is a few ways we can turn this into a black and white image. The first way is we come up to the color profiles and we can just hit Adobe Monochrome. That will black and white the image. Adobe's also added this little quick feature where you can hit right here. That will black and white the image as well. But the quickest and the easiest way is just hitting V on your keyboard. That will automatically apply the Adobe Monochrome by default. Now for my portrait images, I'm just going to undo this. And a keyboard shortcut I like to use is Command and the apostrophe key. And what this has done, it has duplicated the photo down here. So if we click V, then we have a virtual copy of each composition. So we can give our client or the model both a color and a black and white image to their preference. Now, the reason why I recommend using a monochrome profile over just turning down the saturation just like that is that even though it does look very similar to monochrome, if you actually scroll down, you'll notice that you do lose quite a few controls within Lightroom, and the hue, saturation, and luminosity is one. So for an example, if I just play with my luminosity of the blue channel, nothing actually happens, but if I hit V on my keyboard, now we end up with a black and white mix. And then if I play with the blue channel, which is affecting the luminosity in a black and white fashion, the slider is now working. It gives you the creative control over contrast and separation in a monochromatic image. This is basically mimicking the effect of placing a color filter over the lens, but it's been done in post-production. Alright guys, so remember when we're talking about using a red filter to add contrast into your images? Well, I just want to quickly show you how you can emulate this look in Lightroom, but also that you actually really do struggle to get the exact same look, as there is definitely a difference, and using a red filter like this bakes it into the image. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so I have two identical compositions side by side. Obviously, one was used with the red filter and one without. Now, the exposure is different, as like I said before, you do actually lose a stop or two stops because of this red filter, as it acts like an ND filter. Now, look what happens when we convert both these images to black and white. The difference isn't completely obvious, and it's not completely in your face, but there is a few things to note. The sky is noticeably a little bit darker, and you do get a little bit more clarity in these clouds up here as well. Down here you can see in the shadows, because it removes all the blue out of the shadows as well, you're getting a lot more contrast in the red filter image compared to the image on the right without the filter. And then there's a few ways that you can actually emulate this look. What you can do is come down to the black and white mix, and you can start playing with the blue channel, and you notice that if you reduce the luminosities of the blue, you don't really get the same result. It is darkening the sky, but down here in the shadows, they're kind of untouched as well. And then if you scroll up and you're trying to like crush your shadows, you just get a completely different look, right? So I did just reset everything we just did, and over here at the bottom again, above the presets that we just used before, we have a yellow, a red, and an orange filter, and this is meant to emulate that look, but you notice that it really does change your contrast and your exposure a lot. If you click on one of these and then try to match the exposure, you kind of do get the same look, but not really. Even if you match it with the sky, and you do get the same shadow detail down here. Just zooming in on this lifeguard tower, you can see that the midtones are slightly different as well. So these don't really work as advertised. I think if you want to get that red filter look, it's definitely best to do it in camera. And again, you are shooting with intent and committing to that black and white look from the start. I've left these raw files in the description down below if you want to have a play and see the difference for yourself. If you do want to check this out, this is linked in the description down below. I highly recommend this one from Tiffin. I've also left these two raw files in the description down below if you want to have a play for yourself. And if you want to learn why ironically I think color is everything in photography, definitely go check out my video about color theory right here. If you're not going to go watch that video, go pick up one of your cameras, get off social media, go take some photos, maybe put one of these on and be more intentional in your black and white images. And I hope you guys learned something today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.